Okay, chapter 12, monopolistic competition and oligopoly. This chapter 12 is really important, most important in microeconomic course actually, right? Until now, anyway, you have some introductory concept of all of contents of earlier chapters, but the coverage, the contents in chapter 12 is very new to you, okay? And also mathematical calculation matter. In the sense, chapter 12 is most important. So structure of chapter 12 is like this. Section 1, monopolistic competition. Section 2, oligopoly. Section 3, price competition. Section 4, competition versus collusion, prisoner's dilemma. Section 5, implication of prisoner's dilemma for oligopolistic pricing. And cartel. Actually, chapter 12 consists of two parts, monopolistic competition and the others, oligopoly. So oligopoly is really important, more important than monopolistic competition. Okay? Okay, we go monopolistic competition first. Monopolistic competition and oligopoly. Monopolistic competition, market where firms can enter freely, each producing its own brand or version of differentiated products. Free entry, monopolistic competition featured by two things, free entry and differentiated product. Okay? Free entry in the long run means no profit, zero profit. Okay? Free entry and exit means long run profit should be equal to zero. And second feature is differentiated product. Until now, we assume they are homogeneous products. Okay? But all the jjajangmyeon is not same. All the pizzas are not same. A little differentiated with each other. Okay? That is monopolistic competition. And what is oligopoly? Market in which only a few firms compete with one another. A few firms in the market, okay, few firms. Number of firms are very small. Okay, that is number one feature. Second feature is this. Entry by new firms is impeded. So there exists entry barriers in oligopoly case. Okay, so there exists entry barrier. Number one feature is competition, intense competition between few firms. Okay? And number three, cartel, market in which some or all firms explicitly collude, coordinating prices and output levels to maximize joint profit. The result is similar to monopoly case. Okay? But few firms share all the profit. Okay? And production and prices. That is cartel. Slide number 4. The market of monopolistic competition. A monopolistic competitive market has two key characteristics. Number one, firms compete by selling differentiated products that are highly substitutable for one another, but not perfect substitutes. In other words, the cross price elasticity of demand are large, but not infinite. Okay? Differentiated product, but highly substitutable. Because of this, cross price elasticity of demand are large numbers. Okay? We already studied cross price elasticity of demand. Right? How can I say? Demand, right? That is percentage change in QI, percentage change in price of J, for example, right? That is positive. It is cross price elasticity of demand. That is number one feature. Number two, there is free entry and exit. It is relatively easy for new firms to enter the market with their own brands and for existing firms to leave if their products become unprofitable. Free entry and exit. Okay? Next slide. So equilibrium in the short run and in the long run. That is figure 12.1. Because the firm is the only producer of each brand, it faces a downward sloping demand curve. Demand curve is downward sloping, right? Perfectly competitive firm face horizontal demand curve, but in this case, downward sloping demand curve. Why that happen? Because differentiated product, okay? Each producers has its own brand, right? Because of downward sloping demand curve, price exceeds marginal cost, and the firm has monopoly power. Downward sloping demand curve means price greater than average cost, okay? So think about price marginal cost markup, okay? In this shown described in part A of figure 12.1, price also exceeds average cost, and the firm earns profit shown by the yellow shaded rectangle, right? So marginal cost equal to marginal revenue. Marginal revenue when this company produce QSR, right? And at this production, firm can charge PSR. So price greater than average cost. So positive profit. Okay. Next slide. Equilibrium in the short run and the long run. A monopolistic competitive firm in the short run and long run. In the long run, this profit, if firm enjoys positive profit in the short run, new firms enter market because free entry and exit. Okay? Assumption of free entry and exit. This process continues until long-run profit equal to zero. The firm's market share falls and its demand curve shifts downward. In the long-run equilibrium described in part B of figure 12.1, price equals average cost. So the firm earns zero profit even though it has monopoly power. Okay? So actually you studied this one in Menkew's Introduction to Economics book. Now think about this graph. Right? Price and demand curve is downward sloping, right? And monopolistic competitive firm has some, how can I say, some monopoly power, a little, right? And average cost curve is like this. That is average cost curve, right? And marginal cost curve is like this, right? And downward sloping demand curve means downward sloping marginal revenue curve. And we know because of free entry and exit, long-run profit is equal to zero. What is profit? Profit is equal to price minus average cost multiplied by Q. Okay? And long-run profit is equal to zero. That means price equal to average cost. Right? Price is demand curve, isn't it? Right? Price equal to average cost at the profit maximizing quantity, where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So we know that at this point, price equal to average cost. So this form long-run profit equal to zero when company produce this amount, Q star, right? And profit maximization condition is marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. So marginal revenue should be like this. Marginal revenue is like this. Then marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost when this firm produces Q star. When produce Q star, price, demand, is equal to average cost, right? So this one should be equal to zero in the long run. That is panel B of figure 12.1. Monopolistic and figure 12.2. Comparison of monopolistic competitive equilibrium and perfectly competitive equilibrium. Under perfect competition, price equals marginal cost, right? Price equal to marginal cost. The demand curve facing the firm is horizontal, as I said before. So the zero profit point occurs at point of minimum average cost, right? So in the perfectly competitive market structure, firm face horizontal demand curve. This one is equal to marginal revenue, isn't it? Right? And average cost curve is like this, right? And marginal cost is like this. So marginal cost is equal to price over marginal revenue when producing Q star. At this Q star, profit is equal to 0 because price equal to average cost, right? And this marginal cost curve cross minimum point of average cost curve, okay? When the market is perfectly competitive. Next slide. Under monopolistic competition, price exceeds marginal cost, right? Price. So in here, price is, when producing this one, price is this one, right? That is P star, right? Price exceeds marginal cost. So marginal cost is here, so gap between the two, like this, okay? When producing Q star, marginal cost is this one. So price greater than marginal cost. In other words, price minus, so marginal cost markup over marginal cost is positive. But here, price equal to marginal cost. And the market is perfectly competitive. That is the difference. In the monopolistic competition, price exceeds marginal cost. Thus, there is a deadweight loss. So this figure is exaggerate the gap. Price marginal cost gap is exaggerated, right? So I'd like to graph this one again. For example, like this, right? So how can I draw? Average cost curve. Average cost curve is like this, right? And average like this. There is demand curve. And marginal revenue curve is like this, right? And marginal cost curve is cross minimum point of average cost and also intersect at this point. That is marginal cost, okay? Then long-run price is P star and marginal cost is this one, right? In the perfectly competitive structure. And we already know that this one is deadweight loss, right? Deadweight loss. As shown by the yellow shaded area, the demand curve is downward sloping, so the zero profit point is to the left of the point of minimum average cost. Okay? So the zero profit point, this one, is, right? That is, for example, Q monopolistic competitive, right? That is minimum point of average cost curve. For example, Q perfectly competitive production, right? Minimum point average cost. This is left-hand side of minimum point of average cost curve here, right? In both types of market, entry occurs until profits are driven to zero, until long-run profit equal to zero. Okay? Next slide is slide number 9. Is monopolistic competition then a socially undesirable market structure that should be regulated? Anyway, monopoly case with a special exceptional case of natural monopoly, right? Monopoly case outcome is usually bad, right? So it should be regulated by the government. Similarly, is monopolistic competition Then a socially undesirable market structure that should be regulated. Monopolistic competitive equilibrium also should be regulated. That is question. Number one. In most monopolistic competitive market, monopoly power is small. Monopoly power is not so large compared to a monopoly case. Monopoly case, demand curve is much featured like the inelastic demand curve like this, right? And marginal revenue is like this, and large price marginal gap. Price marginal cost gap is quite large in monopoly case, but here, not so large. It's small, right? Usually, enough firms compete. So, in monopolistic competitive market, monopoly power is small. Usually, enough firms compete. There are lots of number of firms, right? Number of firms. Monopoly case only one, but there is a large number of firms exists, providing a differentiated product with little monopoly power, right? So monopoly power is different. Small price marginal cost markup, large price marginal cost markup. Okay? Any resulting deadweight loss will therefore be small. So deadweight loss is very small, just this one, right? But in monopoly case, for example, is, how can I say? Monopoly case, that is marginal cost, and average cost is like this. Average cost is like this. So lots of price and marginal cost gap, right? So deadweight loss is very huge numbers in the case of monopoly. But monopoly's competitive market structure, deadweight loss is not so large. And because firms' demand curves will be fairly elastic like this, instead of this. Okay? Average cost will be close to the minimum. Average cost, right? This one and this one. So there is a small difference. That is number one feature. Number two, any inefficiency must be balanced against an important benefit from monopolistic competition. That is product diversity. So we already said product differentiated with each other, right? So when product is perfectly homogeneous, then think about utility function. Utility, consumer satisfaction level only depends on numbers of quantity, right? Larger quantity means larger utility, okay? But another factor increasing consumers' welfare is this diversity or differentiated products. Consumers can enjoy variety of products, right? This pizza or that pizza, this beer or that beer, lots of beers. That is another benefit, right? From the perspective of consumers. So, product diversity is just exact factor increasing some consumers' welfare. This benefit arising from diversity or differentiated products can balance against deadweight loss of monopoly power. Okay, that is number two. Most consumers value the ability to choose among a wide variety of competing products and brands that differ in various ways. The gains from product diversity can be large and may easily outweigh the inefficiency costs resulting from downward sloping demand curve. Okay? So example, 12.1. Monopolistic competition in the market for Cokes and coffee. The market for soft drinks and coffee illustrates the characteristic of monopolistic competition. Each market has a variety of brands that differ slightly but are close substitutes for one another. Now look at this. The price elastic demand is very large, minus 5.2, minus 8.2 like this. Okay? With the exception of RC Cola and this one. All the costs and copies are quite price elasticity, with elasticity on the order of -4 to -A, -4 to -A. Each brand has only limited monopoly power. This is a typical of monopolistic competition. Okay? Now we go oligopoly. Until now, nothing new. But now start new things. You cannot start it in introductory microeconomic course. Oligopoly. In oligopolistic market, the products may or may not be differentiated. May or may not be differentiated. What matters is that only a few firms account for most or all of total products. Most important feature of oligopoly is only a few firms, number of firms is limited. In some oligopolistic market, some or all firms earn substantial profit over the long run because barriers to entry make it difficult or impossible for newcomers to enter. Okay? No free entry and exit. There exist entry barriers anyway. Okay? Oligopoly is a prevalent form of market structure now. Example of oligopolistic industry includes automobile. In Korea, how many firms exist in automobile market? Hyundai Motors, Kia, same, right? And Daewoo GM, Sangyong, few numbers of firms supply all the automobiles in Korea, domestic market. And steel company, POSCO and Incheon Steel, like this. Aluminum, petrochemicals, electric equipment, and computers. LG or Samsung usually. Okay? Few firms supply all the markets, supply all the products in the market. Okay? So, scale economies may make it unprofitable for more than a few firms to coexist in the market. I already explained this kind of thing. Scale economies. We studied scale economies, right? So, especially after Second World War, size of firm bigger and bigger to enjoy this scale economies actually, right? So more production of firm means lower average cost, right? So that kind of thing, because of scale economies, oligopoly happen. Other reason for oligopoly is patent or access to technology may exclude potential competitors. Patents, some in petrochemical industry, for example, or access to technology. So developing country, for example, can produce some petrochemical products with frontier technology, for example. Why? Simply, the developing countries' technology level is very low. This works like entry barrier. Okay? And needs to spend money for name recognition and market reputation may discourage entry by new firms. Right? There are natural entry barriers. We already studied natural entry barriers repeatedly. They are basic to the structure of the particular market, especially in electricity market, right? In addition, or utility market. Incumbent firms take strategic action to deter entries. But sometimes firms deliberately deter new entry using strategic actions. For example, some company charge very lower price. With that lower price, new firm enter the market, right? managing an oligopolistic firm is complicated because pricing, output, advertising, and investment decisions involve important strategic consideration, which can highly complex. Okay, that is oligopoly. So oligopoly. So now think about why oligopoly happen and scale economy happen. Okay, that is another story of technological change. One firm is more productive, more efficient, or more productive than others, right? So they can, because of scale economies, they can produce same good with cheaper cost, cheaper average cost than other firms, small firms, simply talking, right? So the bigger, the beautiful, in this case. Then what happened? Originally, the market was perfectly competitive, but after emergence of some highly efficient, some large firms, market structure changed, transformed from perfectly competitive to monopoly or sometimes oligopoly like this. Actually, that is the result of technological change, simply talking. Can you understand? So because of this reason, imperfect competitive market structure prevailed after Second World War. Actually, this kind of some change happened in capitalist development after First and Second World War, imperialist period. Okay, and equilibrium in an oligopolistic market. In an oligopolistic market, however, a firm sets price or output. Firm decides price or output based partly on strategic considerations regarding the behavior of its competitors. With some modification, the underlying principle to describe an equilibrium when firms make decisions that explicitly take each other's behavior into account is the same as the equilibrium in competitive and monopolistic market. Only one difference is strategic some action or consideration of competitors' behavior. Okay? When a market is in equilibrium, firms are doing the best they can and have no reason to change their price or output.